Okay, we are officially at 8:30. Everybody want to take their seats, please, so we can get started here. My name is Ron. I'm an alcoholic. I'd like to welcome you all. Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown, PA. Just a couple things so you know that our sister group is a big book study. It meets every Thursday. If you're ever out and about, we're like a block and a half from here. The flyers are on the back table back there, along with a lot of other AA functions and events. Please take advantage of not only the flyers, but also if you have any announcements for the good of AA, please bring them and post them there. We also have a Facebook page, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown's Facebook page. Not only keeps you connected with what we do each week here, but there's pretty much stuff going on up and down the East Coast every day. So if you're bored in AA, go on there, look at some of that stuff and seek it out, because there's a lot of great stuff and a lot of fun things to do. And it's a way to keep informed of all AA, of all the roundups, the conventions, and there was a pig roast. It's like every day is something great. Anyway, Daryl's going to come up here and chair this meeting. Please be mindful of this church. The only thing they ask us is not to smoke on church property and be mindful of the property. It's a $10 million facility, and they give a bunch of alcoholics the keys. Like, who's the crazy people, right? And all we got to do is take care of it, so be mindful of that. Here's Daryl.
Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speakers Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Daryl, and I'm an alcoholic. This is a 1-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday evening at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street at 8:30 p.m. in Doylestown, PA. The business meeting for this group meets every Saturday at 7 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. The purpose of the group is to provide a consistent message of hope, of recovery, through the God reliance and service to others, through the practice and the teachings of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others may benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, please simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anyone new from out of town that would like to introduce themselves with their first name?
My name's Kelly. I'm an alcoholic.
Welcome.
I'm Sarah. I'm an alcoholic.
Welcome, Sam. Anyone else? All right. The Conscious Contact Speakers Group encourages sponsorship. Will anyone work in knowledge of the 12 steps and is willing to sponsor, please raise your hands. Thank you. Are there any announcements for the good of AA?
Hi, I'm Kim. I'm an alcoholic. Hi, Kim. The 12th annual Waves of Sobriety Roundup from Atlantic Cape Dinner Group in Southern New Jersey is having their roundup November 9th, 10th, and 11th. It's at the CP Marriott in Galloway. The site is wavesroundup.net. If anyone's interested, we would love to have you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any more announcements? All right. We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purpose of big books and CDs to help those who cannot afford them can put donations in the jar on the table marked big book and CD donations. If you would like a CD of any speaker, past or present, see me or Ron before or after the meeting. They are available free of charge. I've asked Rich to come up here and read the AA preamble. Rich.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Brian, and I'm an alcoholic. This is the AA Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and to help other alcoholics achieve sobriety. And I believe Nick's going to come up here and read the 12 steps.
Hello everybody, my name's Nick, I'm an alcoholic. Is to the 12 steps of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all of our affairs.
Oh, there we go. Oh, no, it's right here. Oh, okay, I'm sorry about that. The seventh tradition states every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. At this time, I would like to pass the basket. We have no dues or fees, but we have expenses. This group provides many services. Your donation covers rent, big books, CDs, events, and workshops. There is absolutely no smoking on church property. Please take a moment of silence. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. Now I'll introduce the speaker, Peggy H, a good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group, of one or many. Her home group is one or many from Fester, New Jersey. Welcome.
Thank you, Daryl. It's Ventnor, New Jersey. Hi guys, my name is Peg and I'm an alcoholic. Thank you for having me tonight. Just want to thank Ron for inviting me up here to share my experience. I absolutely love AA with all my heart and soul, and I love this book. It gave words to my alcoholism, so anytime I get an opportunity to be in service, whether it's working intensively with other alcoholics or coming to speak at a meeting, it's just an absolute honor. There was a time in my life when I couldn't stand before people because alcohol put me in a situation where I couldn't even stand unassisted. So for me to be wearing heels up here, talking in front of a big group is quite an accomplishment in the back of my head. I'm grateful for that every single day. I recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body. You know, that's contingent upon a daily reprieve that I have. I don't take that for granted any other day. And if I go a long period of time without doing 10, 11, and 12, I can feel it. And by long, I mean like a week. So it happens quickly for me. It always has. I don't know if that'll change within time. So I'm just going to stick to my 10, 11, and 12 every day to the best of my ability. I also want to thank the girls that came up with me tonight. I have some really awesome sponsees that made the journey with me. And I'll tell you what, like, you know how you're in the car and you're listening to your own committee up here? Like, I have all these different voices. Like, I have like sponsor Peg who answers his phone. I have employee Peg, and I have to take business calls. And then I also have best friend Peg who needs help because she broke her foot. You know, like, I have all these versions of myself. So like, I highly recommend, if you ever have an opportunity to stand before a group and give a talk, to bring a bunch of your sponsees that are just chattering the whole time, because it shuts my committee right off. They're like my live committee. So thank you guys. I guess I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. You know, I am an only girl. I grew up with 3 brothers, and both of our parents were sober members of Alcoholics Anonymous, and they got sober together after they got married, and we never had alcohol or drugs in the home. I didn't have any experience with that. We did have the Serenity prayer on the wall at home, and I remember looking at that and being like, what does that mean? But I had no real definition of what an alcoholic was. I knew that my parents went to meetings, and sometimes I would even be the little kid in the basement running around in those meetings. But again, just no conception. I thought maybe an alcoholic was a homeless person sleeping under a bridge. You know, I didn't really give it much thought. When I grew up, I always felt like a little bit different because I was an only girl, and then I had some really bad stuff happen to me when I was a kid, which I feel as though created some separateness from everybody else at that time. But it's not the reason why I'm an alcoholic. The reason why I'm an alcoholic is because when I have one drink in my hand, I'm thinking about the 12 after it, and that's not an exaggeration for a bottom barrel drinker like me. I'm thinking about what time the bar is closing, if I have to cross state lines to go to a later bar, because in Delaware all the bars close at 1, so I'd have to either drive to Atlantic City or go to Pennsylvania. I mean, I was just constantly thinking 3 steps ahead. What was going to happen? You know, where's my reserve? And I did not care about anybody else. It was just my number one priority. And also, you know, once I actually consume that, I just can't control, no matter what promise, no matter what level of despair I recently just experienced, it does not matter. Like, it does not come to the full consciousness of my brain when I have that drink in sight. When I'm driving across the Ocean City Bridge to the liquor store at 8:30 a.m., I can't think of anything else. And, you know, so when I was a kid, I always felt like a little bit uncomfortable in my own skin. And when I was 16, I had my first beer around a bonfire, and that was a spiritual experience for me. All of the sudden, all of the kids that I kind of thought didn't like me, they liked me, you know, and it just gave me that instant relief that you hear about sometimes. And I remember being in love with alcohol the first time I tried it. And after that, when I was 16, it was, you know, when was the next party? Kind of like, I guess what most people would call like the normal thing. And I would love to say that I was a good kid growing up, but I wasn't. You know, I was constantly grounded and doing like bad stuff and sneaking out of the house, but it was usually with a drink was behind it, you know, like going to hang out with the neighborhood kids. And, you know, all that changed when I had alcohol. And I didn't really have any serious consequences until I was 21 when I had like my first blackout, but I didn't know that that was a consequence at the time. It took me step work to figure that out. So just to let you know how delusional I've been for a very long time, probably started before 21. But I didn't really I didn't get a DUI, no real legal consequences. I was never ostracized by my friends until I remember when I was 24 years old, and there was a large catalyst in my life that created alcohol as an emotional dependence for me as well. My father was killed tragically in a car accident, and he was my best friend when I was 24, and I didn't know what to do with myself, and I didn't know how to handle grief, and I didn't want to handle grief. So that was a great opportunity for me to use that experience and say, poor me, and give me a reason to drink, like a real reason. Like, don't ask me why I'm drinking too much because my dad just died and I'm only 24. You know, when it's really from about my mid-20s, like, everybody else, all my peers were kind of getting jobs and getting married, getting engaged, buying houses, like all that normal stuff. And I was still like, no, where's the party? Or can we go to Vegas this year? You know, where are we going to go next? Let's go to New Orleans. I always wanted to still live that lifestyle, like I was still in college. I always wanted to drink like I could when I was, you know, 19, 20, 21. And I chased that for a little bit. So my priorities shifted in my mid-20s, and I didn't really know what was going on anyway. I was faced with a devastation in my life, and but that's really when that switch happened, right? So when I started to become emotionally dependent upon alcohol, my spiritual life had left me completely, and it wasn't long before I was chemically dependent. Within probably about 2 years of that car accident that took my dad's life, I was an everyday drinker. And by every day, I mean, I started out with a pint, and then it went to a liter, and then I was drinking anywhere between 3/4 and a gallon of vodka every single day for days straight, months on end. My longest run was 8 months straight when I finally came to, when I was about the age of 28, I think. Part of my memory, because it's all blackout for me. I think it was about the age of 28. I came to, I was in the middle of a road trip, and I was kind of like coming in and out of it, and I didn't have enough alcohol to sustain me, and I started to go through withdrawal, and I didn't know that it was withdrawal. But I knew something was wrong. So long story short, I ended up in a detox in the middle of West Virginia. And the gig was up at that point. Like, all of that hiding, all of that daily drinking, all of that running. I mean, all that time I spent manipulating people, turning them against each other to make them think that I was okay, and all the friends that I abandoned, all the jobs that I had changed, like, that things were different once that happened. So I entered that detox in West Virginia, and I just remember on my 7th day there, getting up and calling my mom. And I was supposed to be in Boston with the rest of my family for Christmas, and like that just wasn't happening. And I just said, "Hey Mom, how you doing?" And she said, "I'm just really glad that you're safe." And I was like, "Merry Christmas." So as soon as I got home from that trip, had an intervention, my family was all there, and anytime my brothers would say, "Peg, please do this," or "We're going to be upset with you," it was a done deal. I mean, I've been seeking people's approval for my entire life, So this was just like an easy, like, "Oh, well, this will shut you up. Perfect. I'll definitely go to rehab." Absolutely. So I go to rehab for the first time and start to feel a little bit well, no drinking for 3 weeks will do that to you. And by the time I left there, I made all the promises, and I started to go into AA meetings and, come early, really leave super early, like halfway through, like right before the Lord's Prayer. And I definitely would not talk to anybody, because that would maybe you would remember me, and I would run out the door. And I just wanted to go back to drinking like I did back when I was 21, almost 8 years ago. And every single time that I picked up a bottle, I could not stop. I was within a week back to drinking a gallon of vodka a day. So I started to enter into detoxes because I couldn't uphold that for very long, and I knew it was wrong, and I didn't want my family to find out. And so I would quietly enter detoxes. I've been in detox in Delaware, all over the state of New Jersey. Hospitals are a big part of my detox story. And kind of like running in an AA meeting, running out, going to detox, that whole thing. And it just wasn't really working, and I didn't know what to do, and I didn't even realize the extent of my disease at that time. And I remember, in between my first rehab, couple of detox days, I had met a friend in an AA meeting, and we decided to go to the bar together. And when we got to the bar that night, I'll never forget this. It was a beautiful spring evening, and the Flyers were in the playoffs. And so it was, before Memorial Day weekend. And we go into the bar, and I'm looking all around, and the Flyers are on the screens, and I turn to my friend, I'm like, "Let's go make guys buy us drinks." And she's like, "How do we do that?" I'm like, "Just watch," So I walk over, I scan the bar, and I see a guy in a Flyers jersey, and I'm like, "That's the one." And I walk over to him, and I stand next to him, and "Hey, do you like hockey?" And he's like, yes, I do. I'm like, "I used to drive a Zamboni when I was in college." I smiled at him, and he's like, "Can I buy you a drink?" I'm like, "I thought you would never ask." So we instantly fell in love. I moved in within 3 weeks. Match made in heaven. Such a good guy. I love him so much. Yeah, sure, he's a good guy. So, it didn't really take that long before he found out that there was empty bottles around the house, and it was either me or his dog that was doing it. And it wasn't Dexter. So, it was revealed to him pretty quickly that I had a problem with alcohol and anything else that you would really put in front of me. And we started to get into arguments because I am the Mrs. Hyde, Dr. Jekyll. I'm absolutely that crazy person. And it wasn't, we were together for 18 months. And, he was like, "I think you have a problem with drinking." And I'm like, "Oh, you're right. There's something I had to tell you. I've been to rehab before. I think I want to go back, though, because you're right. It's just too much." So I did the whole volunteer to fix the relationship rehab trip. And as soon as I got out of there, I was drinking on his couch, and he came home and he found me, out. And he was like, "What is wrong with you?" And I'm like, "I don't know." But we stuck it out for probably another 8 months, and that was a beautiful period of my life that I barely remember, where the police department was at our place all the time and said I'm a bottom barrel drinker. And if you would ask me 4 years ago how many times I was arrested during that relationship, I would have said 4. But recently I learned it was actually 11. So that's how much of a blackout drinker I am. No recollection. And the only reason why I know that today is because of the amends process that I've been fearlessly, committing myself to throughout the years. And that guy is a good friend today, thank God. But yeah, so, the relationship really wasn't working out. At least the Summers Police Department didn't think so. And I came to in another jail cell, and they were like, okay, it's time for you to go. And they're like, but you can't call Jeff because he has a permanent restraining order against you now. I'm like, okay. So I call a friend that I met that drank like me, and he was like, do you want to go back there? I'm like, legally, I think we're broken up. Pretty sure I can get an idea sometimes. And I think that's correct. So he's like, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, well, I think that my life is pretty unmanageable, right? So I know I'm an alcoholic. I've been to rehab a bunch of times. Been to detoxes plentiful. I've been in the emergency room well over a dozen times. I mean, I know the whole protocol. I have DTs. I tell them I have heart palpitations. They think I might have a heart attack. And they hook me up to a monitor, give me Librium, send me on my way with a script, and that's like my permanent detox. I'm like, that's just I don't think normal people do that. And I also haven't worked in 4 years. My relationship just ended. My dog died a year ago. But let's just drink for this weekend. And then after this weekend, I'm going to get my life together. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to go to AA. And this is my plan. And this is how I will survive. And he's like, all right, but I'm like, just for this weekend. Let's drink, though. Just for the weekend, right? Famous last words, literally. So we started out drinking that weekend, and that was at the end of March of 2012. And I came to on July 13th of 2012 with zero recollection of the last 3 months. To this day, I have no way of finding that information out. I don't speak to that person anymore, and I just have no idea. And to be honest with you, I'd almost rather not know what happened in those 3 months. So when I came to on July 13th of 2012, I was, I sat up and I just didn't feel right. And it was the same old thing where I couldn't remember when I ate, couldn't remember when I drank water, didn't know what day it was. Is there any vodka left? So I pour a glass of vodka, warm vodka, in a little plastic cup. And, I drink it back and I immediately throw it back up in the cup. And I drink it again right from the cup, and I throw it back up again, and I just can't get it down. And if you're an alcoholic like me, I start to do my tricks, right? Where I hold my nose and I pound on my chest and I just try to force it down, and I can't. My body is just completely rejecting it. And I just didn't feel right, I felt very weak and tired, and I didn't know what was going on. And I asked my friend to take me in the emergency room, and he was like, are you sure you want to go? And I'm like, yeah, I don't feel good. So we went to the emergency room, and all I really remember when I got there is that they brought me to the back, kind of rushed me to the back, and then immediately I got taken from the emergency room up to ICU, and they told me I wasn't going anywhere. The doctor came in and told me that my liver was operating at 20%, and all of my organs were shutting down. And while they were quickly hooking me up to every piece of machinery you could possibly imagine before intubation, they were telling me that my survival rate was really small and they'd have to call my family immediately. In all reality, at that time, I was 97 pounds and I was jaundiced from head to toe. I had distended belly. It looked like I was pregnant with twins. Hair was falling out of my head. My eyelashes were falling out. I was I had onset of wet brain, so I didn't know what was going on. And, there I am in that hospital bed. And all of a sudden, I kind of came to, and I see my mom, who's a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous and has 40 years of sobriety. And I see my little brother, and he's my best friend, and it's just heartbreaking for me to realize that he has to see me like that. one of my other brothers, and then I have another brother that lives up in Boston, and he was like, I'm not coming down, just tell me when the arrangements need to be made. Like, I make really light of this, and I don't tell a lot of war stories, but like, I was that malicious, crazy, vicious alcoholic that would undermine everything, total cars, get into car accidents, steal from you, like whatever, destroy relationships, whether it was yours or mine, it doesn't matter. You know, I kind of breeze over that stuff because I feel like we all do that, and that's a little redundant, right? We all have that path of how many people we've hurt. And that's the best way to describe it, is that Joe didn't want to part to come down and say his goodbye. And that's what the doctors were telling him, that everybody needs to be called. And, you know, the days kind of change, and I can see on that white board on the back of the room, and my family kind of comes and goes, except for Joe, of course. And then all of a sudden I come to one day, and there's the faces of those people that I used to meet in the AA meetings. And they were 12-stepping me. And they were told not to come because I was dying. They were told there was no purpose, and they came anyway, several different times. And I don't remember a single word that they said, but I do remember their presence. And just knowing that after all that time, they had not forgotten about me when everybody else did. All the boyfriends, all the friends at the bars and everything like that. It didn't matter. So the day started to continue on, and actually tried the steroid treatment that is either going to kind of like finish you off, more or less, or it'll help your liver heal. And after about 2 weeks, they tried that liver treatment, and the steroid treatment rather, and it started to heal my liver. And I started to get a little bit better, and my liver started operating at 30% and then 50%. And they were draining my belly and doing all kinds of other tests. I mean, the medical stuff alone would take me an hour to talk about, but I was very, very sick. I couldn't produce red blood cells. I mean, I couldn't walk at that time. So when my body had finally stabilized enough, 85% of liver function, and all my other organs were able to operate on their own, I was about a month of being in that hospital. And the doctor came in and he said, you know, we don't know why your body's getting that much better, but it is. And there was just this moment in the hospital where I laid in that bed and like fully now, like understanding isn't the right word. Just fully conceding to my innermost self right there in that moment that like, I just laid there and I'm like, okay, I did this. Every single decision that I've made up until this point put me in a hospital bed where nobody's coming to visit me. I'm clinging on to dear life. But I don't even know what, because the doctors won't tell me, and they don't know why I'm getting better. So like, if there's a reason why you're going to keep me here, my life is no longer my own. And I don't even know what that means, but because my ideas don't work. And I'm going to start talking to you right now because like they were just talking, the doctors were just saying that I was going to meet you soon. So I don't know what any of that means, you know. And then I just had this like giant wave wash over me, and it was like a feeling of serenity and love and peace and acceptance. I can't even describe it. It would be like describing God to a newcomer. It's just indescribable. So, you know, as I got a little bit more time now and read a lot, people describe that as a white light experience. You know, so the doctor came in after after about a month, and he said, you know, you're well enough to leave this hospital, but you can't go home. You have to go to a secondary hospital, and we don't know how long you're going to be there, but you have a long treatment process ahead of you, and you have to learn how to walk again. So there's just a whole bunch of different components. We're going to send you to the secondary hospital. So they wheeled me into the second hospital, and it was like a physical rehabilitation and a place where I could basically, you know, get all the medications that I need to receive, have the physical therapy, and see all the specialists. I had a panel of 6 specialists that I needed to see. And at this time, I was still about 97 pounds. I could barely walk. And, you know, it wasn't long where I was just getting up every day, taking the medication, doing exactly what the doctors told me to do. Whatever the nurses and the nutritionists said, I just did. Because it was just just had to take direction at that point, and my direction has always been wrong. So little by slowly, I started to feel a little bit better physically, and I started to walk again. And before you knew it, my kidneys were better, my pulse ox was 100%, I mean, all these amazing things. And one by one, the specialists were kind of like clearing me, like the cardiologist said I would be okay, and the kidney specialist said I would be okay, and they changed up my medications. And after 6 months of being in that hospital, learning how to walk again, all that stuff, they were like, okay, it's time for you to go home. I'm like, great. So I've been in the hospital for 7 months. I was in here from July 13th through Hurricane Sandy, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. Nobody thinks I'm alive. I burned all those bridges. Where am I going to go? And my mom's like, you can't come to my house. And I'm like, okay. Haven't had a drink in 7 months, by the way, Mom. Just want to let you know that. And she's like, you can't come here. I'm like, all right. So my little brother from Philadelphia came to visit me, and he was like, listen, I know you're getting out in the beginning of February, and I just wanted to let you know, if you want, you can come live with me. I have an extra bedroom in my house, and you just get a job and go to AA. Like, our parents did that. And they fell in love, and they had the 4 of us. Like, it worked at some point. Just try it. So I was like, yeah. Like, this sounds great. You know, meanwhile in my head, I'm like, what other options do I have? Of course I'm going to move in with you. So he's like, great. I live in this beautiful section of Philadelphia called Kensington. So I move in, and, you know, and I'm like hobbling around because my health is still kind of bad. I have edema in my legs, and I'm, you know, still suffering a little bit, but I'm so happy to be alive. It's just an incredible feeling, and I never thought I would see daylight again outside of a hospital room. And, you know, so I got a job where I'd sit at a desk, and there was an AA meeting 5 doors down from my brother's place. It's called the Port Fishington meeting. So I literally had to walk 5 row homes down to go to that meeting every day. And I went to the meeting, and the first day that I had the opportunity and figured out the schedule, I went to that meeting. I sat down in front, and I'm like all wide-eyed and bushy-tailed. And then fear struck me and like closed my throat up, and I don't get my hand up, you know. But like, I know that I need help, and I remember what I've been told before, but I'm just stuck with fear, like just gripped by it. So the first day turns into the first week. I'm not talking to anybody. I'm not asking anybody for help. I'm certainly staying away from the steps because I still don't know what that stuff means. And, you know, in the meantime, I get the job, and I even make a little boyfriend that sells Suboxone, you know, like, I can do all those things, no problem. But I was scared. I was riddled with fear. And after the first week led to the second week, and 6 weeks there, I stole my brother's bike and I went to the liquor store. And when I got back to his house, I poured the vodka in a cup 8.5 months after my last drink. And I drank it, and I immediately threw it up. And I drank it again, and I immediately threw it up. And I did the same thing I did before, but this time it worked, and it actually went down. And I was waiting for that relief to come, and it didn't come. So I drank more and drank more. And I don't really remember a lot of what happened the rest of the night, but I did wake up with a tattoo. And my brother standing over me, what are you doing? Get out of my house. You're crazy. It's time for you to go. I don't know what's wrong with you. Here's the phone, by the way. I get on the phone, and it's my brother Joe from Boston. And I haven't talked to him in I don't even know how long. And I just say hello, and he's like, I never want you around my family ever again. Click. So I begged my brother to help me get into treatment. I was like, the only other place I know is the Last Stop, and like, I really don't want to go there. So can you please help me get into treatment? Like, I need to be in long-term 6-month like rehabilitation. I don't care wherever it is. I'll go to John Bro. I don't care what it is, what it looks like. Just please, like, help me. So he did. And he actually drove me there too, which was big at that time. And he dropped me off at treatment with 2 trash bags full of clothes, and he was like, good luck. And, when I sat down in treatment and I was scared to death to get kicked out because I knew that was my home then, right? So anywhere I lived at that time was my home in that moment. And I was just scared to death, so I just did everything that they said, man. Like, don't look at the boys, woo! Stand in this line, I'm standing in that line, and I'm looking down at my feet. And I'm just praying to God, please just let me hear something. Listening to H&I, and I was in treatment for 3.5 months. So anything that they told me in treatment, I would just say, for example, Marge would tell me to read something out of the book, and I would say, read page 46 or die after, because I'm going to die if I drink again. The way that my body immediately rejected it again, I'm going to go right back to that place. I can't do it. And I lost 12 pounds in 3 days after picking up that drink. So my body was not normal again. It was not right. So I spent 3.5 months in treatment, just listening and clinging on to any single suggestion that they would offer me and trying to obey the rules. And when it came time to figure out what was next, again, I have nowhere to go. So I'm looking at either the shelter or, a recovery house. And I got into a recovery house by a very slim chance. And, I sat in my counselor's office and I was like, listen, what do I do when I get out of here? I'm scared. I don't want to go. I'm really afraid. Because the last time, in the last 12 months of my life, when I spent 6 weeks out of an institution or a hospital, I drank. So, I'm incapable of figuring this out on my own. What do I do? And she was like, go to a meeting, get a sponsor, work the steps. And I said, what else? And she's like, that's it. I'm like, there's gotta be more. That cannot be it. There's no way that's right. Now I think you're crazy. And she was like, that's it, just trust me. And I'm like, all right, I'll do it. What else do I have to lose here? It's my life. I went into my recovery house with my 2 trash bags full of clothes that did not fit me, an expired license from the state of Delaware. And I went to the closest AA meeting that I could possibly find. And before I even stepped foot on the block of where the AA meeting was, I ran into a woman named Michelle at the corner, and I was like, Michelle, how are you? And she was like, Peg, you're alive. Michelle 12-stepped me in the hospital almost a year to that date. She's like, I can't believe you're here right now. Everybody thought you died. I'm like, well, I didn't die. I've been in a hospital and then in a rehab. But I need a sponsor. And I need that sponsor yesterday. And she was like, let's go to the meeting first. And I was like, will you be my sponsor though? I need an answer now. And she said, no, because I'm in the middle of getting my PhD right now, and I'm taking 2 women through the book. So taking you on would exceed my limitations. So she had the humility to tell me basically that she would not be able to help me, but that she had a sponsee that she took through the work that would take me through the same exact way. And I was like, perfect, I'll take her. And she was like, you have to call her. And I was like, tell her I want her though. And she's like, but you have to call her. I'm like, all right. So I waited 5 days and I called her. And, I met with her and I didn't even know what was going on. I was just taking simple direction. When we got together, I was like, what are we doing? And she's like, well, tell me your story and see if your life is unmanageable. And she's like, oh yeah, we got to get in the work right away. If I would have known, I don't know. It's kind of an insult, but whatever. No, she was like, yeah, you need to get in the work right away. I'm like, I don't know what that means. And she's like, what we're going to do is we're going to meet once a week. And we're going to take this book and we're going to open it up. And I'm going to highlight things in it. I'm going to explain things to you. There's promises in here. There's prayers. There's steps. All the steps are in this book. And that's how we do step work. And I'm like, really? That's it? And she's like, yeah, we just sit together and read. And I'll show you important stuff and stuff that you have to remember. And you can talk about whatever you want to talk about. And if you don't understand something, then I'll break it down for you. Wow, that's easy. So that's what we did. We sat book to book, hand to hand, prayer to prayer, highlighter to highlighter, just dove right in, and I didn't understand anything that I was reading, except for those pieces where it talked about the hopelessness nature. And then when I read the doctor's opinion, I'm like, oh my God, that's why I can't ever go back. That is the idea that has to be smashed. I cannot drink like other people. I'm not like a normal person. Why didn't somebody tell me this before? So the more that I got into it, we started to read. She was like, congratulations, you're done step 2. I'm like, what? Like, how did that even happen, you know? And she's like, well, actually, you did 1, 2, and 3 in the hospital, but you didn't follow it up with an inventory. And that's probably why you drank. She's And I was like, well, I'm ready to do an inventory now. And when I sat down with that pen, I just wrote. It was easy because I just wanted to be free. And if you had asked me at that time why I wrote so well, and why so consistently, thoroughly, and honestly, I wouldn't have told you that I wanted to be free. It was just a feeling, a driving force that was trying to get out of me. We went over to the 5th and actually felt relief because I was like, wow, I knew that something had to be wrong. There was something consistent in every single equation, and it was me. That's a relief to me because I couldn't figure it out for so many years, why they were all so mean to me, why I was a victim. You know, like, how can life possibly be this way, that everybody is so wrong to me? And why do I hate all these people? I have to escape here. I didn't have to escape anymore. You know, and I went through those steps so thoroughly. And in that recovery house, I got a job at Dunkin' Donuts, and I worked there for my first 6.5 months of sobriety. Like, that is not an easy job, man. If anybody here works at Dunkin' Donuts, God bless you. Woo! Especially down the shore in the summer. It's just crazy. But that was the humility in that stage of my life that fit perfectly with what I was doing, and being involved in that book and just getting a steady fellowship, steady meetings, and focusing on clearing out that channel. So when it came time for the 9th step, easy, dude. Called boyfriend number 11 arrests back to back. I'm like, hey, can we meet for dinner? And I sat down with him, and he received it very well. And he is a God of his understanding, so I'm pretty sure that has something to do with it. After that, it was just, not that I was excited about making amends, but I was like, this is so much better than not like having done this. The relief is incredible. So, I made these amends and talked to all my brothers, and I was kind of waiting on my mom because still this is a tough relationship. And then my brother in Boston still wasn't talking to me, so I had to write him a letter, like wherever possible was in my recovery house at that time. So I wrote him a 5-page letter of all the things that I had done wrong and made the amends, right? If I do not do this, then, I will drink again, so this must be done. And I sent it in the mail because he wouldn't pick up the phone. And a week went by and 2 weeks went by, and I called my sponsor. I'm like, Joe didn't call me, didn't write back or anything. And she's like, all right, we do this to keep our side of the street clean, not to seek other people's approval, so let's not get it twisted here. You're doing this to keep this channel open so one day you can help somebody else. The same experience that you're having right now. And I'm like, so I may never get him back. And she's like, did you even have him in the first place? I'm like, probably not. Just an idea. So I had to get rid of some of those ideas in my head, right? So that's a little bit more revealing too. When I'm actually honest enough with my sponsor constantly, every time I'm on the phone with her about my feelings, if I can just put them out on the table, she can decipher for me what the real and what the fancied is. Just bring God into it. So, I started to have acceptance and be okay with that, right? Because what else are you going to do? And then it became easy. And all of a sudden one day I just let it go. And my sponsor said to me, what if you make AA your family and you never get that family back that you thought you had in your head? I was like, I can do that. That's no problem. So we continued on with the steps. And before I knew it, we were reading Working with Others. And, it says that nothing ensures anything like immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. And I was like, psh, that's it right there. That's it. So I want immunity from drinking. Why didn't we read that first? And she was like, we had all those other steps to go through first. And she was like, well, you know what you have to do. Intensive work with other alcoholics. And I was like, no. She's like, you have to sponsor. I'm like, oh, no, I'm not doing that. I can't. You have 5 years and I have nothing. I barely have a job at Dunkin' Donuts and I live in a recovery house. What experience, what kind of hope can I give to somebody else? And she's like, all you have to do is sit with one of these girls and read with them just like we did. And then tell them your experience and talk to them, explain to them the book, and that's all that it is, really. You know, you're not responsible for their sex conduct. On page 69, it says that we're not. You know, like, you don't have to actually give life suggestions. You could just point them back into the book and win with God and that relationship with God, and that's how it works, basically. So I started to even sponsor women, man, and let me tell you something, they have not stopped coming since, and I am so grateful for that. Because on any given day, I need a 12-step experience, and if they don't call me, if it's one of those golden days where nobody calls, then I call them. And I'm like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? I'm really angry at my boss right now. Can you just talk to me? Tell me something terrible that's going on. Let's talk about the big book. And it's one of those tools that I have easily at my disposal today, right? So I need one of those to stay sober every single day. And I need one of those experiences where I'm completely out of myself and I'm not just calling somebody to complain to them about my job. I'm calling them to see how their day was. And it wasn't too long before I had a year's sobriety, and at that time, like, I think I got a position in my Oxford house, and I was so pumped to, like, that day, man, like, I was just so excited. I went to my home group in the morning. At that time, it was Good Morning Ocean City, 7:30 a.m., and I went there. I'm so pumped, and I pick up my 1-year chip, and I'm like, this is all good. Like, I'm doing, like, the little dance and everything, and I can't even believe it. It's magical. Couldn't stay sober for 30 days, let alone a year. So I go back to my house, and I'm doing all that administrative stuff for the Oxford house, and all of a sudden I hear the doorbell ring, and I'm like, only the cops ring the doorbell. Who is that? So I cautiously go downstairs, and when I see they're not all wearing blue, I open up the door. I'm like, hey, and lo and behold, it's my brother from Boston, and he's standing there with flowers in his hand. And I start to cry, and I say, what are you doing here? Today is your birthday. Why aren't you with your family? And he said, today is more important than my birthday will ever be to our family. And that day was amazing because I got to spend it with my mom and my 3 brothers, and nobody was talking about me in the next room, about what they were going to do with me, and there was no arguing, and we were just present together, and we ate pizza. And it was amazing. It was the best day of my life. So I can just promise you this, right? If you do this work, the external stuff comes. I got a better job. I was waitressing. I got a car. I mean, it only drove from A to B, but it was a car. And all the papers were legit. And I started to get things back, like I had really good friends and developing all these relationships, and I'm sponsoring women, and like, life gets good. If you do this work, life gets good, man. But there's also bad stuff that happens too. When I had a year and 9 months, my mom got really sick. And I got a call that she was in an ICU in South Jersey, and immediately, I hadn't made my amends to her yet, verbally, but I had already started showing up as a daughter. But immediately I just knew in that moment when she called me from ICU that I had to drop everything and go down there, and I did, and I dropped everything, and I went and I sat next to her in ICU, and she was crying because she felt so terrible because of the illness that she had, and she was in a lot of pain, and she said that when they were loading her in the ambulance, she said a prayer and she asked God if there was anything left that she had to tell anybody. And she said, the only thought came to me is to tell you that I'm proud of you. And I sat with her in that hospital bed for at least 5 hours. And the miracle of that is not that, we had that conversation. The real miracle of that is that when I sat there for those 5+ hours, however long it was, there was nothing inside of me that wanted to run. I didn't want to drink. I didn't want to run to a guy. I didn't want to hop on my phone. I was completely present and filled with love and gratitude. And she was in the hospital for about a month, and she recovered. She's getting better and better, and it wasn't as bad as we thought. And but I had that unique experience of really showing up when it counted. And the entire time she was in the hospital, of course, I was bringing her stuff every day. And then, it was a Friday, and she was supposed to be leaving that morning. So I was kind of hanging out with a sponsee over at my sponsor's house, and I was getting ready to go over there to kind of like see where she was in her process with the social worker, and then I get a phone call, and it's my brother, and he said, Mom died last night. And I was devastated. And I couldn't believe it. It's the first traumatizing thing that had happened to me in my life because I could not anesthetize myself. I couldn't run. I knew too much about AA, and I knew I never wanted to drink again, so that's not an option. So how do I stay away from that option, right? Do you have a real surrender when it counts? Did you do the work before it was necessary? Thank God I had that structure and that foundation. My first thought when he said that to me was, thank God I'm sober, and my second thought was, how am I going to help my brothers because they do not have a God of their understanding like I do? And like, that's from you guys. That's from AA. That is not me. That is not who I was. And I showed up for them, and I did all those things that people do when their family needs help and they're in a time of need. I'm caring and considerate, and I sit with them and plan the funeral. And it wasn't an easy walk, but we did it together. And a couple months went by, and I was like, that's when you check on your friends, right? Second, third month after somebody passes away that they're close to, because that's when they think that everybody forgot, right? And that's when they suffer the most. At least that's been my personal experience. So it's about 3 months after she passed away, and it just happened to be her birthday. And my brothers were texting me that day, like thinking of you and everything like that. And, I didn't want to, I built up this wall. And I remember getting off of work and just crying. I get in my car and I'm crying the whole way home, and I'm like, God, please help me. Driving past all these bars, I'm like, I know that's not an answer anymore, but I know that they're there, so I'm acknowledging it, so that's not good, right? So just let me keep driving. Because this pain is so great, I don't know how to handle it anymore. This grief process is not like the 12-step process. There were some moments in that grief process when I would work intensively with another alcoholic, and that would be relieved. But that was for like an hour, and I was just so tired and desperate of feeling that way. I'm like, it didn't make sense for me to be sober. I didn't have to feel that way. And of course that's my selfish thinking. And I remember getting home that night, I was waitressing at the time, and I just stood in the shower and I was dry heaving. Have you ever had one of those cries where you can't catch your breath? That was the first time I ever had one. I never felt anything before. And I just begged God. I'm like, God, please. I don't want to drink, right? That's the bottom line. But I don't know if all these pieces are going to come back together. Like, please, just show me a sign that they will. And that will allow me to move through no matter what. Just one day that these are going to come back together. Not today, not tomorrow. I know it's your timing. I know it's going to come in a separate package that I'm not expecting. In your timing. Whatever, please just show me a sign. And my job from this point on is to make myself aware to anything and just try to be present for it. And I'll just keep looking, and that's our deal. And I get out of the shower and I meditate for a little bit, and I go to sleep, and I get up really early the next morning because I have to speak at a meeting. So thank God I'm still showing up for AA, right? And I get up, and it's like end of February, and it's super cold. And I remember not wanting to be there at all. And I go to the meeting, and they were like, has anybody here had the thought of a drink? And I wanted to be like, me, but I'm the speaker, so the speaker can't be transparent, right? God forbid I want to drink and now I'm your speaker. That would make me a real alcoholic. I don't know. So my ego wouldn't let me share, And when I went through my story and I told everybody what I told you guys tonight, I just had a moment of clarity. I'm like, listen, I'm really sorry if I didn't give you a good job, a good whatever story this morning, because I'm suffering really bad right now. My mom died a couple months ago, and some mornings I just don't even want to get out of bed. But I can do this. I can still show up for AA, and that's all I got right now. And I hope that's good enough, And people start sharing, and there's this one guy, and he raises his hand. He said, hi, I'm Joe, and I'm an alcoholic. And we're like, hey, Joe. And he's like, Peggy, you don't know me, but I know you. He said, I've been looking for you for a couple of months now. I stopped by your job. You work at the Crab Trap, right? And now I'm like, He's like older, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, that guy's creepy. But I listened to him with an open heart and an open mind. And he was like, well, I should probably explain to you why I've been looking for you. Your mom passed away a couple months ago, and I was with her the night before that she died. I'm a priest that gives Eucharist. And I gave her what we now know to be her final Eucharist. And he's like, I have to tell you something. That when she prayed with that cross around her neck, with the rosary around her neck, I have never seen anybody pray with such reverence before. It gave me hope. And he's like, she talked about you and your brothers and how you have a niece and nephew in Boston and now you're a part of their life because of the men's process you went through. And she's so proud of you. And she was so excited that you were sober. And she said, you must know my daughter. She's the prettiest girl in AA. Sounds like her. Right in that moment, I just knew. It's funny because usually when I'm searching for an answer and I'm present and aware, it takes a little bit longer than like 12 hours later. Much longer, but that gave me the hope that I needed, you know. And nobody in that meeting knew that I was praying the night before just for a small sign. It's just an unbelievable feeling just to know that, you know, God answers us in such a way when we need it. And, you know, that was a great experience for me because I had not made that verbal amends to my mom when she was still alive. I was still holding on to some things. And I was in a resentment. And if you read the 12 and 12 in the 8th step, when we become willing to make amends, sometimes there are amends process and resentments that are at a subconscious level, right? So they're a little bit on a deeper level. And that's what I had with my mom, break it down, you know? So I had a lot of work to do from the time that she passed away and I was able to grieve a little bit. And then I was able to nurture that relationship. And by doing that, it was as simple as somebody, since my mom was in AA for 42 years when she died, somebody would come up to me in a meeting and they would say, I know your mom and your dad. When they got sober together back in Camden, when Camden was cool before it turned bad, they used to start meetings and they had AA parties. And when people talk about her now, I can listen with an open heart and an open mind. I feel like I have a new relationship with my mom. I've been able to become grateful in a whole nother way that I never thought was possible. Never in a million years. I have a better job now. And I'm in a position with my job that I get to come across alcoholics all day long. And I think that keeps me in a grateful position every single day. And I know that we can lose that in just a moment's notice. But like with my great job, like, you know, been able to like buy a real car, like, you know, do all these cool things. And if you would have asked me 5.5 years ago, what life beyond my wildest dreams would have been, I would have been like, well, I have a car loan in my own name and I'm responsible for it and I pay it. No guy pays it for me. I have an apartment in my own name and I have a golden retriever at my side. All three of those things exist today in my life. So. But if you would ask me today, Peg, what's life beyond your wildest dreams? I would say nothing external, just that peace of mind. Just keeping that channel open. And I know at any given second before any meeting or any terrible situation at work or any relationship issue, I can just stop and go to that refuge and have that moment with God where I can just get back to the basics, ask for help, ask for that pause, and just be at peace with myself again. And then I can move forward again. That's life beyond my wildest dreams. So, just want to thank Ron again for having me out tonight. Guys, it was amazing. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Customary for us to man, it was an emotional talk, very powerful, very powerful. And let's thank Peggy for much. customary for us to form a line and thank our speaker. They come here at their own time and expense to share their experience, strength, and hope with us, and that's powerful. Don't forget the meeting after the meeting. We had 6 amazing women come here in the last 6 weeks. We have the CDs that are available free. Grab them, take them with you. They're always great to have. We'll have Peggy's CD Thursday and next Saturday. It's available free to you guys. If you guys want to do a little service work, we have to put the chairs up on the rack. It's always the alcoholic test. 7 deep, 5 across. If you get that right, you're not alcoholic. We got a nice way of closing.